Hello, this is Angelica Yingst, and you're listening to Centered, grounded conversations about the metaphysical. Is this thing on? It most certainly is. Finally, last I came to you, it was my birthday. I turned 49, and everything was on top of me like a big pile of trash dump tires. I could see holes with light, I could see holes with darkness, but I couldn't figure out how to get out of them. And I couldn't even get through the middle of the tire because of my giant belly. And then someone set them on fire. And then the toxic fumes started making me feel like I was passing out. And so I don't know how long I can take this tire metaphor. Welcome to 2023. I am Angelica Yingst. I'm here with a little Q&A up in this John. And yes, son, it's time for me to be answering questions. I opened the doc and it said Q&A December. Damn, it's late. Everything is so late, but I'm wrapping things up. Things don't feel so late. I've caught up. I made a new to-do list. Stuff is happening. I think I might have said this in the beginning of the month, but I think I'm Capricorning a little too close to the sun. And like all those little pickaxe germs trying to mine for sugar in your teeth after you eat candy, they never stop. It never stops unless you stop it. And so a lot of cavities. I am kidding. 2023 started intense and demanding. I'm having a breather right now. I'm finally able to breathe, bro. Breathe. Take it in. Sit. This is what I'm trying to do now. I'm trying to rest. I have emails to answer. I have obligations that need tending, but I'm still sitting. I'm trying to sit. I bought myself a robot vacuum, and I don't think anything I have bought has been more gratifying or life-changing than my robot vacuum. The only thing I regret about the robot vacuum is not buying it sooner. I have two things I regret. Not buying it sooner, and two, not buying the one that also mops, because that would be very useful. But he cleans under everything, over everything, in between things. He tells me when he has a blockage or an obstacle. And in general, he just does his own thing, and I appreciate that. I just push a button, say, do that thing, and he does the thing. And I love my family. And I've been so busy for months and months and months that I've been asking, can you put away the groceries? Can you do this? But there's a lot of extra emotional labor in telling people to do things around the house, how to do it, what it is. You know, hey, can you get me a towel out of the linen closet? My 12-year-old, what's a linen closet? Like, you know, the place where all the towels and sheets are. I don't know where that is. Like, what? We have lived here for a decade. I do not. Or can you put the groceries away with a very enthusiastic sure? And then 2 minutes later, where does this go? How about this thing? Where's that go? I'm like, oh my gosh, I literally have everything labeled. So I groan, and then I become my worst self. Ugh, never mind. And then I become like that guy in SNL who's the tech support. I think his name is like Nick something or other. And he goes, somebody's like, oh, I can't get my thing to do that. And he goes, move. Kicks somebody out of the way so he can just fix it and not explain how to do it. So I'm trying to get in touch with my best self again. And I think that's going to take a minute. So in my monthly reading, I think I said something like, life is relentless and goes by much too fast, which is an old joke from Annie Hall, which is a Woody Allen movie, which I would unwatch if I could because of Woody Allen, but I can't. And it's brilliant. So I'm just going to integrate that and just say, it's very funny. And there's an old joke in it. And he says, like, two elderly women are at a Catskill mountain resort. And one of them says, boy, the food at this place is really terrible. And the other one says, yeah, I know. And such small portions. And then Woody Allen basically says, this is how I feel about life. It's lonely and miserable, and there's suffering and unhappiness, and it's over much too quickly. And that's kind of what I've been sitting with. Like, I really, really enjoyed my last months at Hibiscus Moon. I got to connect a lot with our students. I loved reading and grading finals, but oh my goodness, it was a lot. And it was over much too quickly. And while I was in it, it was just all consuming. And so I feel like the new moon on January 21st was actually my new year. And actually, it is a lunar new year for most of the world. So I finally said, okay, Angelica Maria Elisa Estrada Kenna Yingst, what do you want 2023 to be? And I kept thinking, simple. I just want it to be simple. Let it be simple. Whatever it is, let it be simple. And then I went through my visioning class, and I had 12 amazing ladies, and we make vision boards, and we do a lot of meditation and journeying in that space. And when I was doing it, we pulled out intentions, and we pulled out our guides, and we created a space for the year. And I did too. And everything I was seeing was outside. And the word that was most prevalent for me was the word forest. And that word emerged, and it felt so like in my bones. And I don't understand it yet. My husband said, "Who's Forrest?" And I gave him this like baby dragon side eye, like, I will blow fire, motherfucker. But forest, nature, outside every day. It's hard to imagine in January. We're in the middle of a big snowstorm, which makes me want to go outside, actually. There was a lot of stillness. There was a lot of forest bathing. There was a lot of a sense of like herbs and growing things and the earth and in communion with the earth. And my guide came as the gatherer, the one that gathers the medicine, the one that gathers the people, the one that gathers. And the stag came. And I'm still processing it all. There was a lot of movement. There was a lot of walking with the dogs, walking with the children. There was swimming in rivers and creeks and pools. And I just love the gentleness of the vision. And I'm wondering, do you have a word of the year that you're working with, and how do you work with it? I have this brilliant little book that was probably made for the Barnes and Noble like discount rack. I don't know. I honestly, it's probably not, but it's called The Words of Wisdom for Women. And you open it up and it has like just a word. And the word I just opened to is flow, which is my BFF's word of the year. And it says, just get out of your own way and let your life flow with the grace of a clear mountain stream. So there is no focus here, or there is no forest here in this book, but I know that forest is going to come. And when I made my vision board, I had a lot of other words. I saw a lot of Zen Buddhism. I saw a lot of like my roots of how I got into this. I mean, I was thinking about Zen when I was in high school, probably before high school, because I went down rabbit holes, which I've always done, which is I was reading Jack Kerouac. They're talking about the Zen Buddhists. They're talking about jazz. So I went out and purchased all those albums and searched. We didn't have an internet then, but, search for all those albums, search for all those books, and read them voraciously and meditated voraciously. And, when we lay foundations like that, even if we leave that for a long, long time, if we don't go back to Buddhism, or we don't go back to Zen, or we don't go back to what we've found, I'm approaching 50 and I'm realizing the wisdom of that foundation that I had, that Zen is often thought of as the gateway of Buddhism. Like, people start studying Zen because Buddhism is confusing and Zen is quite easy. And there's a lot of Western practitioners that write about Zen, a lot of Westerners that have brought Zen to the New World, and Suzuki and Alan Watts are very popular figures. And when they talk about Zen, it's, sit still, be present. And that's something we can do. And in some ways, part of the, message of Zen is you're not really supposed to understand it. You're supposed to experience it. And so, this year I feel as though maybe I'm going back to studying some of those early things like the koans and the sitting. I once was, in this circle when I was getting my shamanic training, and I was really ashamed of my discipline with my practice. I got up, I would pray, I would meditate for 10 minutes, I would drink lemon water, I would pull tarot cards, I would journal my dreams, I would do all of this stuff every day, and I was still really ashamed of my practice. So it was a new year, and I kind of messaged the whole group, hey, how long do you guys sit? Like, just do a sitting meditation. How long do you do it for? Because I'm doing it for like 10 minutes, and I feel like I should be doing more. How often do you do shamanic journey? So put that up there, and radio silence. Nobody's talking. Finally, my mentor, Pixie, writes, Angie, I don't do sitting meditation. I can't do it. So when I go for a walk, it's a meditation. When I'm mindful, I mindfully do my life. And I know she does. We can all see it. So I only journey when I need information. And so all of this is to say that be kind with yourself. I had an awesome practice. It still didn't feel like enough because that's a wound I needed to heal. It wasn't because I wasn't doing enough. So don't believe what you think about yourself. Examine it. Get curious about it. That was very instructive for me to ask. And once Pixie opened that door, everybody said, I don't sit. I don't sit either. I don't do that kind of meditation. I don't like that kind of meditation. I play guitar. I paint. I do this. I do that. Love that. It was so perfect for me to know that. My 10 minutes was enough. And so I'm starting again, 10 minutes. I can do that. I get so much information in 10 minutes. When I'm trying to be a hollow bone, when I'm trying to be empty, when I'm trying to think of nothing and be present with my breathing. So I'm processing all of this, my gentle vision of 2023. Right now I'm staying tucked into my pillow for a week or two as I heal from this insanely busy and demanding time. I have a whoopee, I have my books. Sometimes I turn on my little suitcase record player with jazz music, and I'm sleeping a lot, catching up on reruns of Drag Race. I'm also not waking up at 3 a.m., which I thought was a thing that happened during menopause for women, but turns out was just stress of not having enough hours in the day. Not surprising. Still surprising, but not surprising. I'm a human. So, taking long baths, silent meditations, drinking copious amounts of hot beverages, particularly coffee and chocolate, wondering if I can do more things to induce hot flashes. But I do this until I have to chauffeur children around, make food, go to games, go to practices, hang out, drive them to places when they miss the bus. And, I have this feeling as I'm doing all of this that I'm more myself than I ever have been before. And that might sound strange, but if you know, because when you start doing work and you start healing things, you have breakthroughs in healing and you have breakthroughs in your care. And when you do that, you become more authentically yourself, which is apparently more authentically me, someone who talks to herself all day like a narrator and also sings half of that narration. And the awesome part is just letting myself be dreadfully bored. I don't turn on television. I'm like, girl, don't do it. You don't want to do it. Don't turn on a podcast. Just be still. Don't fill the space. So when I'm bored and I'm silent, I become creative. So creative, I want to burst, and I feel this pressure of life being way too short, like I haven't done enough yet. And so I'm giving you some permission right now to sit for a little longer, to be bored a little bit, to let yourself get creative. What do you actually want to do? Do you really want to watch TV, or are you just trying to fill the space? Because as we do that, we also get to know ourselves a little better. So I am going to have this episode be a few questions I answer. I've already done, 15 minutes or so of just intro, but I want to answer some questions that were posed in December, except for the ones that have expired. But I'm praying none of them are Angelica, how do you put out a kitchen fire? Or Angie, how do I get out from under this heavy pile of tires I seem to find myself trapped under? This is what I can say in January, which is kick, 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 cover your head. Kick, 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 cover your head. Kick, 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 cover your head. Then rest and keep resting till you know you're ready to start moving again. Okay, so my first question comes from Sharon Muzio, who basically says, when the cards are telling you that your client is her own worst enemy and is basically causing the problems, what the fuck do you say to her? How can this be packaged in a responsible and ethical way, yet get the point made so she can address her BS? P.S. Asking for a friend, LOL. And my friend Jay had the best response. Only she can prevent forest fires. And really, isn't that summing up just about everything? You could say, only you can prevent forest fires in your own forest, Self-sabotage is generally the problem here. And how do you convey that message ethically? So first of all, we don't want to cause more harm. And it is challenging. Don't think it's not challenging. But what makes tarot challenging to read for yourself, for example, is that it's really hard to see your own bullshit and then be really honest about it. And it's part of the reason people come to tarot readers or psychics. They want an honest assessment. Is this me or is this the other person? So, when I see something like this happening, I will look at the cards and say something like, I know this situation involves a lot of other people in your mind, but the reading is focused on you as an individual. Perhaps this reading is about shifting your perspective, maybe from outside to within. And so then I will say, let's think about where this is coming from. So if it's self-sabotage, for example, you might want to talk about worth. What is self-sabotage? Self-sabotage is the action of not believing that you deserve an outcome. And so you sabotage that thing because you know what you're going to get at the end. Okay? And so self-sabotage can be really confusing because people are like, of course I want this thing. I want my marriage to work out. I'm not sabotaging my marriage. But when you get down to it and you ask them, okay, what have you seen about marriage? Who is your model for a good marriage? Not just a marriage, a good marriage, for example. Because we haven't seen a marriage go past a certain age when we're in a marriage, when we're in a family of divorce, we have no history of seeing a marriage past a certain point. So we often, when our kids are that age, start sabotaging the marriage. This person's right, they're too critical, they're too this, they're too that. They're gone too much, they're around too much, they help too much, they don't help enough, they do too much, they don't do enough. Whatever it is, it starts irking at us. Remember, judgmentalism is a way of keeping someone away. Judgmentalism is a pushing of away of someone because they are not good enough for us, okay? And so when we are looking for connection and when we're looking for deep intimacy, that thing will be a conversation. When we are building resentment and self-sabotaging, we keep that story going in our head. It just feeds the resentment. And so when we push away, when we're judgmental, we think about why don't I want to talk about this? Self-sabotage. We communicate and want to find a reason to make things better when we want and crave intimacy. So when we start talking about and thinking about self-sabotage with our clients, what we're really talking about is what is the thing underneath the thing underneath the thing? Hey, all of this is your making here. So why do you want this thing that you seem to not want consciously instead of the thing you do want consciously? Why? What is the disconnect there? And when we begin to examine that, it often goes back to worth. It often goes back to being loved. It often goes back to all of those things. So, how do I do this? I just tell them as honestly as I can without being brutal. I do not think honesty and brutality need to go together, and I never do, ever, when I'm working with a client. There have been 1 or 2 times in my life that I felt like I had to be brutal, and I've regretted it. And so when you package it in a responsible, ethical way, you get curious and they get curious. You don't have to say, you're the one sabotaging this. We're not worried about what we can't change in a tarot reading. And so often you will get a lot of this when you're reading professionally. You will get a lot of people in a lot of situations where basically you are seeing your client as their worst enemy. Why? Because we all are. And I know a lot of people resist hearing that. Oh, I'm not causing my own problems. No, maybe you're not. But what if you were? And I'm not going to get too Buddhist-y, even though I really want to. But the first noble truth is that life is suffering. So we're all going to be unhappy some way. And the second noble truth, all of our suffering is a result of addiction, or what they call attachment. Addicted to people pleasing, to being liked, addicted to pleasure in many, many ways. So, we can kind of always come back to those things. What are you too attached to here? So that's a long answer to a short question, but hopefully that made a little bit of sense. You do it kindly, but you do it. Okay, Jay asked, what are some tips to break out of a rut to get back into meditation? I think this is a great question. I mean, the first thing I can just say is lower your expectations with meditation. Truly, honestly, lower them. I start, by meditating 2 minutes a day. And then, when I start getting into a routine, the meditation practice builds up. And one of the things is meditation isn't supposed to feel like a chore, but we can do it daily and have a little bit of obligation and keep ourselves accountable. If we are struggling, for example, to meditate, meditation isn't supposed to be punishing. It's supposed to be a refuge. It's supposed to be your home. It's supposed to be the place that we go to reduce our stress and to deal with life, not to add something on. So if it feels like a chore and things are really hard with it, maybe wait until you're ready to use it as a place of growing and learning. There's hundreds of different types of meditations, and there's lots of different ways to do meditation. Sometimes we're just noticing and letting our thoughts go, right? And other times we're focusing on the thoughts. Like there are some schools of Buddhism, for example, where you are given something to think about when you meditate. And that is, your brain is focused on that thing that you're working out. In Zen, it is the koan, and a lot of people say koan, but they are basically riddles. A great example of one is, what is the sound of one hand clapping? And a lot of us have heard that. Or if a tree falls in the woods and no one's around to hear it, does it make a sound? And part of this is, contemplating the interconnectedness of all things. For example, you can say, I'm going to just focus on a rafter in my home. Okay? Well, if we detach the rafter from the home, it's just a piece of wood. Because the rafter is dependent on the home, and the home is dependent on the rafter. Okay? So if you take, I've heard this Zen Buddhists talk about this, but if you take an idea of a mouse, like just a hypothetical mouse, and you say, okay, this mouse exists. Okay? And then you think about everything that comes with thinking about the mouse. Okay? So if this mouse exists, then the mouse must have had parents. Okay, so once you imagine the mouse, now you imagine the parents and the parents' parents and the parents' parents' parents. And if you have all these mice now, that means there has to have been food. And if there was food, that means there has to have been an earth. And you can go back, and you realize that you can't have the universe without the mouse. And you can't have a mouse without the universe. They're dependent on each other. And so it sounds counterintuitive in some ways, but the interconnectedness, while it makes us feel very small, it also makes us feel vital, part of a bigger system, connected to all that is. Very important idea in Zen Buddhism. We're both everything and we are nothing. So these kind of thoughts can be important. Now, there are also parts of Zen where there's a no thought ideal. Basically, you're taking your brain offline. You're fully aware, you're alert, you're in control of your faculties, but you're not experiencing unwanted thought activity because you are present in what's happening. That's like master level meditation, not expected of someone who's doing 2 minutes of meditation. But the other kind of meditation, the focused or concentrative meditation, can be around something to direct your mental attention. So you're focusing on a breath. Breathing in, breathing out. Counting, box breathing, we call it. Inhaling, 1, 2, 3, 4. Holding, 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhaling, 1, 2, 3, 4. Staying, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can focus on that. You can focus on ideas or feelings like a loving kindness, compassion, a chant or a mantra. As in transcendental meditation, you focus on that. Zen meditation's answer to that is the koan, which is the Buddhist riddle. What is the sound of one hand clapping? What is this? If a tree falls in the forest, doesn't make a sound. Those are paradoxical ideas that are supposed to shock you out of your way of thinking about things all the time. Another famous Zen koan is, if you see the Buddha on the road, kill him, which is antithetical to everything the Buddhist believes in. And yet, it has become this point of wisdom in Buddhism. So, in Zen Buddhism in particular. Now, mindfulness meditation is another type, and mindfulness is just a basic human ability to be fully present in whatever you're doing, and that can be applied to like literally anything. And I love that, and I think that's why it's become so popular, because it is a way to incorporate meditation into your daily life. So you can decide, every time I do the dishes, I'm going to hand wash them, and this is going to be my mindfulness meditation. No music, no TV, no phone calls. Just going to feel the warm water and the bubbles and be completely present with washing the dishes. In Zen Buddhism, which I'm most familiar with, in Zen Buddhism, they call this working zazen, meaning that your work becomes your meditation, because Zen Buddhism really is about applying this all to everyday life all the time. So knitting can be mindfulness meditation, cleaning, like I said, washing our body. One that's very, very helpful for especially getting over resentments or whatever is the loving kindness meditation, or the metta meditation, which is a century-old practice. It comes from Buddhism again. And the phrases are something like this. They're traditional, but generally they are, may this person be peaceful, may this person be happy, and may they be healthy, okay? So you first start by looking at something like what you might draw as a heart map, which is you in the center, and then concentric circles around you. If you're in the center, then the people you're most intimate with, the people you'll tell anything to, are in the next circle. Then the one after that are people you're pretty much will tell anything to, but maybe there's a secret they don't know. Okay, then you go to the next level and think about all those levels, okay? And you'll get out to like coworkers or, people that you just see at holidays or the people that you ride the subway with, that you could take or leave. So the loving kindness meditation starts as this. So you begin saying the phrase first to yourself. May I be happy. May I be peaceful. May I be well. And then you do the next person, which is someone you're very close to, maybe your children, somebody you really, really love. May my mother be happy. May my mother be peaceful. May my mother be well. And then you do someone you're neutral about. May the pharmacist at Giant be happy. May the pharmacist at Giant be peaceful. May the pharmacist at Giant be well. And then you take someone you have negative feelings about. May that asshole be happy. May that asshole be peaceful. May that asshole be well. And then you extend it out. And, you can take as long as you want. You can start with the may I be happy, may I be peaceful, may I be well. Then may my daughter be peaceful and happy and well. May my son be peaceful and happy and well. And then, you can extend it very long or you can do a very quick one. Loving kindness meditations are about cultivating love as the foundation of your practice. It's cultivating love as a muscle and a tool. And it challenges us as seeing ourselves as separate from other people. So it breaks the myth. It destroys the myth of separation, that you and I are inherently different, because that's just not true. So there are a lot of really positive things about loving kindness meditation or metta meditation, and really, really helpful. They increase a lot of those positive emotions and gratitude. They help with self-criticism. It helps with empathy. So there's a lot that loving kindness meditation can be great for. You can do a mantra, Om Mani Padme Om is one. But, you can just sit. Shamanic journey is a kind of meditation, and I kind of hesitate calling it a meditation because it's active. And it is not for relaxation. It's for going in and getting information for yourself. So a little different. Though we often have meditation as a side effect. So I hope that helped. I probably just talked about meditation more than I talked about how do you get back into meditation. But I think finding the meditation that works for you is really important. Where I would start is 2 minutes, setting a timer for 2 minutes, and then building up slowly. And again, the work of meditation is to tame the mind. So if your mind doesn't feel tamed, it feels wild and all over the place, that's what it's supposed to do. You're supposed to notice these things. These are your hookable places. So you're supposed to just notice it. You're just not supposed to indulge it. So Jay asked another great question. Besides defining myself as quote unquote spiritual, I'm struggling to define myself as pagan or Wiccan. What's the difference when they seem relatively the same? So just going to start by saying I love this question, but they are definitely not the same. So pagan and Wiccan are not interchangeable, and we're going to talk about why. But first, I'm going to talk about the Holy Roman Empire, early Christianity, late Roman religion. So I'm saying this because this is an area of special interest to me, and this might be long for some of you. So this is what my degree is in. I get very happy to answer these things. Okay, so pagan comes from the Latin. Now, it's paganus, but paganus might be a better way to pronounce it, which basically means rural or of the country or of the village. It's a country dweller. And it was part of Roman army jargon to say that a civilian was a pagan, okay? Because they were basically anyone not of the city, which the Roman Empire was, right? So Constantine, if you guys know who Constantine is, he was the emperor in Rome from 306 on, okay? And he was affiliated with the pagan cult of Sol Invictus. When I say cult, there was a lot of cults in the Mediterranean at this time. There were cults for just about every god and goddess. And so religion wasn't like a monolith. It wasn't like you said, oh, you know, you're Roman, you believe all this stuff. No, you were in different kind of religious cult ideas. Like you would join a group that maybe followed Demeter, or you would follow one that was, following Bacchus or Apollo or Athena. So there were different cults that celebrated different things. They were all under the same religious umbrella, which was, ancient Greek religion that got translated into Roman religion. But Sol Invictus means the unconquered sun, and this was the cult around Helios, which was the official sun god of the Roman Empire. And you could go down a lot of rabbit holes here, and you can if you want to, but there was a time when that was like totally accepted, that it was Helios. Other people think that Sol Invictus was a Syrian god who got adopted into Roman ideas and religion. Sol Invictus was a cult that was around, and that Roman Emperor Aurelian, who was the, I think, if not the one right before Constantine, it was two. He did establish that as the official cult of the Roman Empire. So he kind of started that. So basically Constantine just kind of went along with that. And Constantine became the emperor in 306. He battled all these rivals to become emperor. And so he was emperor, and then he kept getting challenged. And he was, encouraging these construction of temples around all these different cults, and especially Sol Invictus, and tolerated sacrifices from some of these cults that still practice sacrifice. But in 312, he was in a battle outside of Rome. And this was the moment where he defeated his brother-in-law, who was Maxentius. And he became, enraged. He's fighting all these people. And he sees a huge cross in the sky in fire. And in the sky with that, he saw the Greek words, "In this sign, conquer." And that night he had a dream that Christ came to him, and he marked all of the all the shields with crosses, and became a Christian. So he had this religious experience in 312 Common Era, or what we used to call AD, we now call the Common Era. And so basically until that point, it was just like, oh yeah, everybody do your own thing. But in 380 AD, the Roman Empire, who had been kind of tolerant, stopped being so tolerant. The emperors, Theodosius and a couple other ones, they issued this Edict of Thessalonica. And basically it made Christianity the official religion for all emperors. The entire Roman Empire had to be Christian, and the edict was particularly strongly in effect in the cities, particularly the city of Rome. So all that is to say, and I say all of that because the people in the countryside, there wasn't like phone or TV or internet, right? So they were far away from the emperors and the churches, and the pagans, the paganus, the country dwellers became synonymous with non-Christians, because if you were in the city, you were basically forced to be a Christian, and everything turned Christian and blah, 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 blah. So the pagans, the country dwellers, became non-Christian. There wasn't one religion they were just anything not Christian. And so in a religious sense, that idea of the paganus, the country dwellers, turned into the English word, which was anyone who wasn't a Christian, a Jew, or a Muslim. Okay, so a person of heathenish character or habits was how it was used in 1841. And so in 1908, it began to be applied to modern pantheists and nature worshippers. But pagan and heathen are primarily the same in meaning. Pagan is a little different. It's distinctively applied to those people that were worshiping quote-unquote false gods, as in the Greek and Romans, who were belonging to those cults. Whereas heathen was referring to an uncivilized idolater, okay? As in people of Africa, for example. Or the Vikings, for example, were considered heathens, okay? They weren't necessarily considered pagans because they would see their worship, right? Whereas pagans were just anyone who wasn't Christian, okay? So there you have it. Pagans were originally the country dwellers who were slow to let go of traditional nature-based worship, or goddesses-based worship. And it came to be used as anyone non-Christian or non-Judeo-Christian. So you would hear Jew, Muslim, and pagan. Christian, Jew, Muslim, pagan. And, Christian, Muslims, and Jews are all of what's called the Abrahamic tradition. Okay? So it's very normal to be confused. So paganism is, again, the umbrella term for all of those diverse group of religious and spiritual belief systems that fall outside of the Abrahamic traditions or fall outside of the traditions that are known, like Buddhism, Though pagan is usually put under that, and Buddhism doesn't even have a god. It's a philosophy. It's not necessarily considered a religion. So anyway, beyond that, so pagan can refer to someone who's a polytheist, an animist, believing all things have spirit, or a pantheist, believing that the divine is in everything. And a polytheist means that there's multiple gods. Okay. And they usually place a big significance on nature. And some pagan beliefs are reconstructed from ancient belief systems like Hellenism or Celtic Reconstructionism or even heathenry, which is more Nordic. But Wicca and modern Druidry are religions, okay? So Wicca was developed in England during the 1940s and the 1950s. Yes, it's not even 100 years old yet, Wicca. It was introduced to the world by Gerald Gardner. And the emphasis is placed on nature and the pre-Christian religious and witchcraft traditions of Northern and Western Europe. And it's worth noting that Gardner and his early followers never ever used the word Wicca to describe their religion. They referred to it as the witch cult or the old religion. And later in the 60s, the name was turned into Wicca. So Wicca primarily believe in two gods, two deities, the goddess and the god, and the early figures are responsible for the cycles of life and death on Earth, and they play an important role with the Wiccan Wheel of the Year, or the calendar of Sabbaths. And so rituals and deity worship often take place on the Sabbats or the Esbats, which are celebrations of the traditional moon phases, and they incorporated witch practices, magical practices. Tools used in Wiccan ritual are chalices, candles, pentacles, athames, and those things are specific to Wicca. So if you're a pagan like I am, I don't necessarily always practice energy manipulation like Wicca does, for example. So at any rate, witchcraft is a really broad term and it falls under a lot of practices and traditions. And there's Christian witches and there's Jewish witches, and there's green witches, and there's kitchen witches and hedge witches. Traditional witchcraft isn't a thing because it was based on historical, cultural, and religious beliefs. So are all pagans Wiccan? No. Pagan is the umbrella term referring to all the different religions. There's not a perfect analogy, but you can kind of think of how Christianity has a lot of denominations like Baptist or Lutheran or Methodist. So asking if pagans are Wiccans is like asking if all Christians are Baptists. They're not. But technically Wicca is a form of paganism, meaning all Wiccans are pagans, but not all pagans are Wiccans. Okay? Many Wiccans think of themselves as Wiccan. They don't necessarily relate to the term pagan. So are all witches Wiccan? No. Again, that's a practice, not a religion. It's a practice that can be practiced in a lot of different religions on the planet. And it's kind of more about using nature and connecting with nature. So are all pagans witches? No. Also, no. There are no, pagans can practice witchcraft, but just like atheists can practice witchcraft and Christians can practice witchcraft, there are many pagans who don't practice witchcraft or even believe in the power of validity of witchcraft. So are all Wiccans witches? Not necessarily, though that tends to be a really big part of Wiccan religion. There's often magic and witchcraft and blah, blah, blah. If you are interested in witchcraft, you don't necessarily have to be a Wiccan or a pagan. You can understand the principles of magic and witchcraft without belonging to a specific religion. Okay. So if you're a witch, you also don't have to follow the rule of three, which is a Wiccan rule, for example, or think of things that are positive or negative. There's a lot of stuff that has been Wiccan that people think are part of like any witchcraft, and it's just not. It's just a Wiccan thing. And not even all witches or pagans follow the wheel of the year. And, if you're looking at like the old ways, the old religion, like, for example, ancient Celtic religion, they didn't observe all of the festivals on the wheel of the year. They celebrated Samhain, which is November 1st, Imbolc, which is February 1st, Beltane, which is May 1st, and Lunazda, which is August 1st. So those were the 4 festivals. And, Beltane, Samhain, Imbolc, and Lunazda are cross-quarter days. They're not the days in which, seasons are changing. For example, the Norse people had 3 festivals: Winter Night, Midwinter, and the start of summer, which was Sigurblot. Sigurblot. There are a lot of different ways of being pagan. And so there's not one way, but Wiccan is a religion, and by that law, it has its own rules and its own way of moving up the Wiccan ladder and all of that kind of stuff. So, and I don't know much about Wicca in terms of that because I've never studied or belonged to a coven that's specifically Wiccan. So yeah, if you have more questions about that, there you go. So if you are struggling with what do I call myself? I mean, a lot of people just say like, I am pagan, or I am not Christian, or I follow an earth-based path. Earth-based spirituality is how I often refer to it. But now I just say I'm pagan because it's what I am. I'm just connected to the earth, and that's it.
Thanks for listening to Centered with me, Angie Yingst. If you'd like to send me a question or comment about this show or any shows, you can send them to Angie@themoonandstone.com.